Bruno Mars was taking a quiet stroll through the bustling streets of New York City when he heard something that stopped him in his tracks. A street performer's soulful song unlike anything he'd ever heard. What happened next was a life-changing moment for the performer and a reminder of music's true power. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and please complete our 1,000 subscribers for more inspiring stories. It was a breezy autumn afternoon in New York City. The streets of Manhattan buzzed with the usual symphony of car horns, chattering tourists, and the occasional street performer hoping to capture the attention of passers-by. Among the throng of people weaving through the crowded sidewalks was Bruno Mars. With his signature hat pulled low and sunglasses shielding his eyes, he moved quietly, enjoying a rare day of anonymity. Bruno loved New York for its energy and creativity. It reminded him of why he'd fallen in love with music in the first place: the rawness, the stories, the soul. As he passed by Bryant Park, something made him stop. It wasn't a flashy billboard or a street vendor calling out to sell their wares. It was a voice. The voice wasn't polished, but it was powerful. It carried through the air with a depth and soulfulness that cut through the city's noise. Intrigued, Bruno followed the sound to its source. A young man sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk, a battered acoustic guitar in his hands. His clothes were plain, worn jeans and a faded jacket, but his presence was anything but ordinary. The man sang with his eyes closed, pouring everything into his performance. The lyrics spoke of love lost, the struggle to find oneself, and the hope that carried him through it all. The rawness in his voice and the emotion behind every note resonated deeply with Bruno, pulling him closer. A small crowd had gathered, some dropping coins and bills into the open guitar case, others simply standing still, captivated by the performance. Bruno found himself mesmerized. It wasn't just the man's talent, it was the authenticity. The song wasn't just being sung, it was being lived. Bruno stood at the edge of the crowd, his heart pounding. As someone who had spent his life chasing and creating music, he knew when he was witnessing something special. And this was extraordinary. When the song ended, a ripple of applause spread through the small group of listeners. The man opened his eyes and offered a shy smile, nodding in gratitude as people clapped and tossed a few more bills into his case. Bruno hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a crisp $100 bill and dropping it into the case. The performer looked up, his expression a mix of gratitude and surprise. "Thanks, man," the performer said, his voice hoarse but warm. Bruno smiled. "No, thank you. That was incredible. What's your name?" "Jake," the man replied, sitting up straighter. "Jake Carter." "Well, Jake, you've got something really special," Bruno said, his tone sincere. "Where'd you learn to play like that?" Jake shrugged, his fingers absent-mindedly strumming the guitar strings. "Taught myself. Music's been my escape for as long as I can remember. It's the only thing that's ever made sense to me." Bruno nodded, understanding all too well what Jake meant. "Do you perform around here often?" "Every day," Jake admitted with a sheepish smile. "This corner's my stage. It's not much, but it keeps me going." Bruno studied him for a moment, his mind racing. There was a fire in Jake's music, a spark that reminded Bruno of his own early days, hustling for a chance to be heard. "You've got something," Bruno said, his voice firm but kind. "Something real. You ever think about recording? Taking this beyond the street?" Jake let out a dry laugh. "Sure, I've thought about it, but studios aren't exactly affordable. And connections? I don't have those." Bruno's lips curled into a knowing smile. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small notepad, scribbling down a number. "Here," he said, handing Jake the paper. "Give this a call. Ask for Maria. She works at my label. Tell her I sent you." Jake blinked, staring at the note as if it were a winning lottery ticket. "Wait, who are you?" Bruno chuckled, pushing his sunglasses up onto his head and revealing his face fully. Jake's eyes widened in recognition. "No way, you're Bruno Mars." Jake stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, Bruno said with a wink. But this isn't about me, it's about you. Call that number, Jake. I want to hear more of your music. As Bruno walked away, the crowd began to disperse, but Jake remained seated, staring at the note in his hand. His heart raced as he replayed the encounter in his mind. Was this real? Had one of the biggest names in music just offered him a chance? For Bruno, it was just another day in the city, but for Jake, it felt like the start of something he'd only ever dared to dream about. The following week, Jake stood outside a sleek glass building in the heart of Manhattan. The note Bruno had given him was tucked into his pocket, now worn from being unfolded and refolded a dozen times. Above him, the sign for Atlantic Records gleamed in the sunlight. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding as he stepped inside. The receptionist greeted him with a professional but kind smile. "Do you have an appointment?" Yeah, Jake stammered, pulling the note from his pocket. "I was told to ask for Maria. Bruno Mars said she'd be expecting me." The receptionist's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "One moment." She made a quick phone call, speaking in hushed tones. After a few seconds, she nodded and pointed to the elevator. "Head up to the 10th floor. Maria will meet you there." Jake stepped into the elevator, the surrealness of the moment sinking in. When the doors opened, a woman in a sharp blazer greeted him. "Jake Carter?" "Yes, ma'am," he replied, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside him. "Follow me," Maria said, leading him down a sleek corridor lined with gold and platinum records. They stopped at a large door marked Studio B. Maria pushed it open, revealing a fully equipped recording studio. Standing inside, leaning casually against the mixing console, was Bruno Mars. "Jake!" Bruno greeted him with a wide smile. "Glad you made it." Jake felt his nerves ease slightly. "Thanks for inviting me. This is unbelievable." Bruno clapped him on the shoulder. "You've got the talent, man. Now it's time to show it to the world." Maria handed Jake a guitar, and Bruno gestured toward a microphone in the recording booth. "Let's hear that song you were playing on the street. No pressure. Just do your thing." Jake stepped into the booth, his hands trembling as he adjusted the mic. But as soon as his fingers touched the guitar strings, the world outside disappeared. He closed his eyes, pouring himself into the music just as he had on the street corner. Bruno and Maria exchanged a look through the control room window. It was clear to both of them. Jake wasn't just talented, he was special. His raw, unfiltered emotion translated perfectly in the studio, creating a sound that was both haunting and inspiring. When Jake finished, there was a long silence. He looked up, worried he'd somehow messed it up, but Bruno's grin said it all. "That," Bruno said, "was amazing." Maria nodded in agreement. "Jake, we'd love to work with you. This song has potential, and so do you." Over the next few hours, Jake worked with the team to refine the song. Bruno stayed by his side, offering tips and encouragement. By the end of the day, Jake had recorded a polished version of the song, one that still held the raw emotion that had drawn Bruno to him in the first place. As they wrapped up, Bruno pulled Jake aside. "Listen," he said, "this is just the beginning. If you're ready to put in the work, I think you've got what it takes to make it big. But no matter what happens, don't lose what makes your music special. That's what sets you apart." Jake nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Bruno. I'll never forget this." Bruno grinned. "Neither will I." Weeks later, Jake's song hit streaming platforms, accompanied by a short clip of his original street performance. The world responded with an outpouring of love and support. Comments flooded in, praising his raw talent and the honesty in his music. Jake's life changed almost overnight. He went from playing on a street corner to performing on stages and sharing his story with the world. But through it all, he never forgot that it all started with a chance encounter and a moment of belief from someone who saw his potential. For Bruno, it was a reminder of the magic that music holds. For Jake, it was proof that dreams can come true when talent meets opportunity. Thank you for watching till the end video. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, don't hesitate to like the video and share it with your friends too. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories.